I don't want peace. I want problems, always.
Welcome to Silly Whales. And once again, it sounds like I'm punching it through. Look at that, man. We are in a zone here. In a zone. Yeah. This is a mental health podcast. We talk about things that could be, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it at this point. Things that you might not want to hear at certain times of the day, depending on your current mental state. Things like depression, things like, discrimination, things that make you feel a certain way. This podcast is for everybody, but it might not be for you for that reason, and that is A-okay. Hi, Joe.
Hey.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't get over the bit before your intro. It's so scuffed to me. You might not hear it, but just very funny.
To clarify, to fill everybody in on this, I've had to turn back on my noise suppression. I've had to turn off noise suppression in order to get a sound so we can sync the audio together. And I just picked up a can and just hit it with a tweezer. Let's see, something that's on my desk. It's a tweezer on my desk. I don't know why it's on my desk, but I hit that. I played drums with it, and it was just, it was a performance. Okay, guys? That was it.
I just love the idea of being in like a Hollywood, shoot, and then someone like camera, and someone just going on a counter.
Yeah.
It sounds like a little bit like a cowbell. Like,
Jesus. Thank you as always for listening to the show. We appreciate that. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
We're gonna go into mental health this week. So I'm gonna now say the line so I can do the music. It's time for mental health this week. Yeah, mental health this week. We have a doozy. We have just the one singular thing to let you guys, inform you on. And it's something that's really, really important. And I'm going to do the whole thing by myself, folks. That's how deep this is. Kanye West has announced that he has autism. And that is mental health this week. Now it's time for the journal. Yeah, it's time for the journal. I think it's the most speaking I've ever done an episode. Like, in consecutive time. It's great. Like, we love these days, you know? The journal, old school, if you've been listening to the show for a while, we talk about our lives a little bit. It's okay if you've heard the mental health this week, you go, I've caught up on all the big news. I've got to hop out now. Yes, you can. It doesn't affect us at all. But, the journal. I'm going to pass it over to you, Joe, because I've spoken a lot.
Okay. Let's get some. Gosh, you don't know which to start with, really. Let's just start with some basic life stuff or whatever. So I'm very run down right now. So if it sounds like it is because I am. Job has offered me a bit more, a slightly different role on yesterday, and it really, really made me much more tired. And it will probably become a regular thing. Same time every week I'll end up doing this role, which has literally sort of doubled the number of steps I do every day, going from about 15 to 17,000 to about 30,000 steps, which yesterday was coming up with 20 kilometers. This is not including time when I'm away from my phone, not being in my pocket, which is pretty much never happens when I'm just like on my own, or when unless I'm like going out to, on my day off or whatever. But basically, to put it bluntly, it was a lot, and I could feel it. The I don't know how to explain it, like the top of your legs, but the side, right? Even though I don't think it's a specific muscle, like an individual muscle, that bit there was hurting the most because of just the number of times I have to like step to the side to like move through a busy crowd. Because Saturday's a very busy day. And yeah, it was just it was a nice experience though. It did change up my week, and I like that. The kind of recognition I've had in life, and I feel like you are slightly different to me on this. I don't actually entirely know, but I know that my mum is very much like this. So I think me and mum had a conversation years ago about this, that this might actually be something that I might kind of think about in terms of my working life, because she did it for years, where I get bored of things very quickly. So the desire to want to leave a job and move on to something else is very common, or like quite frequent, I should say. And up until my mum got into the job that she's been in for the past not quite 20 years, but she's getting there. She had never like had a job for very long, not because she couldn't hold it for very long. Like, it's not like she was suffering being in the job or anything, but just merely like she would get too bored and want to do something else. And I kind of get the feeling that that's something that me and her have in common. To be clear, also, even though she's been working in her current thing for almost 20 years, she has constantly moved around within it, right? Like she very much is doing different things almost yearly. So she's working in a job which can satisfy that for her, like that need to do different things and not be on the same stuff over and over again. That like I don't have that feeling of, as far as work seems to be concerned, like that feeling of comfortability. I'm not like, I don't have a desire for that or a real feeling of that. Actually, I'm curious about you, because you've been in your job for a while, and you were talking about comfortability in relation to it. Like, is that something that you have found like, is the boredom thing at least related to you for work a thing that you would relate to work, in terms of like just doing it for a long time, or do you not get that feeling the same way?
Yeah, I think, boredom is. I get really worried when I'm bored, because that leads to more impulsive decision making from me, I've noticed. So, like, the social filter moves away a little bit, and I end up I end up feeling very isolated in that boredom. So it's very rare that I'll try and fix the boredom. Instead, I complain about it and irrationally just discuss how it's ruining my life, and nothing ever really gets fixed by it. So when I'm in a job that I'm bored in, it's usually the countdown to me leaving that job. Now, my job rate has been pretty bad in that. Like, I turn over fairly quickly. So I've been at, as you guys know, some of you guys know, I work at a school, and I've been here for 3 years, and I'm going to segue into this. I now have a new job. Yay!
Yeah, I set you up.
Yeah, you did. And like, 3 years is the longest I've been anywhere. So for me to make that change, it's weird. Sad thing is that I've been wanting to leave this job for about a year and a half, and now I'm gonna have to leave. And the writing's on the wall. Fabrizio Romano's announced it. He said, "Here we go," and all that stuff. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm actually enjoying this now. Like, I'm actually enjoying my time here, and I realize the reason why I'm enjoying it is because it's easy and I'm comfortable. So the next stage, which is a stage of already experience in this job, in this exact same role, in this exact same school, is boredom. And I went through a cycle of it. And that cycle wasn't a good feeling. It wasn't a good, like, experience. And I don't think I want to go through that cycle again. So now the opportunity has come to leave, I kind of have to take it. It'll be really stupid of me if I didn't take it. So yeah, boredom is for me often linked with like that severe depression that comes around, and then that severe anxiety that comes around as well, as you get really complacent and nothing really feels complete either.
Yeah, it for me, that I don't know when I had the realization. I know it was some years ago, but I had like the real epiphany, realization, apotheosis, that my decision, like that my decisions and certainly like the ways in which I act addictively are very much to do with boredom. Like any issues I've ever had with alcohol, issues I've had with YouTube and so on is so clearly tied to the fact that like I can't be like that I find it very difficult to deal with being bored. And it like really strikes me like very hard. But then a job in which, you know, you kind of need, there's a necessary function in doing it, and a boredom that kind of occurs to me generally quite quickly with a job. Because I'm not saying, good to be clear, jobs, and certainly my job isn't a particularly interesting one. Lots of people work jobs like mine and like that I have had, which are incredibly, you know, they're mind-numbingly boring, right? And no one is saying, and you know, obviously lots of people go through that experience and yet still don't end up doing necessarily bad things. But I think the thing I would say is there comes a point where, like you were saying, like that boredom then turns into something. And so for me, it will absolutely start poisoning the rest of my life. You know, suddenly I won't be able to I wouldn't want to engage with other people, and I'll want to, you know, kind of self-destruct in different ways. And I've definitely done it even this year. Oh no, actually, well, I should say last year, but last year, I've done things that I'm not particularly happy about doing. I won't talk about them because a lot of them are kind of mostly like it doesn't really. It's more embarrassing for me than anything, but at the same time, I still don't want to talk about it. Because I don't feel that talking about it gives a lesson to be learned. And that's I'm not doing that because I want to make sure that people don't think I'm a cop out. I'm actively trying to kind of explain that, because I think it's important that the stuff that I do talk about, I do feel very strongly that is a good thing too, because I feel like there's something to gain from it. And there are times where there are things I think about or have done where I'm like, there's nothing to learn from there. It's just simply I fucked up. And sometimes that's good enough, because sometimes confession of having done something is useful for people listening. But in this case, I don't think it is. And I think it's a bit too fresh to basically talk about it. Past that. So doing all of this, simply this like little role change, like will happen like once per week or something like that. That's what I was told today, that it will become a regular thing, it seems. Which makes sense because no one else wants to do it. Is like, you know, will hopefully make my weeks a little bit less monotonous. And if that continues to be that way, then you know, I was saying this to Kez as well. I just want to make sure I meet the wall I'm about that I kind of prepare for the wall I'm about to reach before I get there, because I now know, I'm starting to know myself well enough now that I know the kinds of obstacles I'm going to face before I'm reaching them. And I'm actually now in a situation where I can go, okay, I'm not like preparing that heavily, but I'm setting myself up to know that, okay, you know, Joe, even though you haven't been here for very long, start looking for work now, because a bit like you with the whole year and a half ago, I wanted to leave thing. I wanted to leave the last job by April last year. And not only did I not do that, I also did it by moving to a job within the same company within retail, which is not what I wanted to do either. But it was just like I had to get out, right? Now, some of that is a bit like ambition, so to speak, is maybe a bit higher than it should be, perhaps. But the reality is that I totally could have done it, but my mental health was in such a state that I'm not able to like get myself organized or in order to even like go job searching, basically. So that was even though I knew that about myself, it didn't change my feeling of the ambition of it. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm still in a state where I really don't want to be there. And I think it's kind of interesting, and it's the reason, why I'm personally happy that you're doing the move. Because because firstly, I think you actually probably, I mean, in my mind anyway, I feel like you might be able to find your way back easily if you really wanted to. But obviously, I don't really know that. That's just my assumption. But the real reason is because I think you need to. I think it's good to be able to get out of the thing that you don't think that you want to be in forever when the chance arrives, because you really just don't have I don't think you always have the perspective to be able to, because the perspective is going to be very difficult to determine while you're in it. And if you're like, and if I wasn't so desperate, I wouldn't have changed jobs. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't have happened that way unless I was so desperate. So I would have, and it's really easy to get. I think comfortable is an interesting word. I don't know how I would use the word comfortable in that, but very much like, kind of just you don't really feel, you sort of get worn down to the point where you're no longer considering the likelihood of leaving. You know what I mean? Like, it becomes, it feels like it's too much work because life is now harder. So therefore it just feels like a lot of work. To be honest, I feel like relationships are like that. Some people seem to stay in relationships on that basis as well, which I can understand now and appreciate somewhat.
Yeah, I can't actually imagine, because I've met a lot of people now, and as I said before we start recording, like, when it comes to friendships, a lot of my friends now either live far away or they're really busy. Like, I have a smaller group of friends. Joe, you're one of them. Kessis, is one of them as well. But you guys live in fucking Worcester. Toga, who's we mentioned before, has been like probably my longest friend I've had, who I still speak to regularly. We've known each other since we were like 7, maybe 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, working a contract-based job, and he's fairly busy, but we see him a lot. But I don't see him in person, and he's the one that lives closest to me. I have my secondary school friends who I see. We just went to Tottenham versus Elfsborg a couple of weeks ago. But we only see each other like if we're lucky, every 6 months now. When spring rolls around, I'll see one of those guys every week for football. Could we do it in the park? But aside from that, a lot of my communication with friends is this podcast here, and like via WhatsApp. Like, aside from that, those are the friends who's my age. All of my other friends are older. Like Ryan. Hi Ryan, how you doing? Is old. He's old. No, I'm joking. He's like, but again, he's the mosh pit daddy who, whenever I showed somebody a picture of him, they go, wait, he's nearly 40? Because he looks like he's like 30. People get shocked by that. White people can age well too, I'm just going to put that out there. Anyway, and I have my football coach, senior football coach, I guess, who's a few, like 5 or 6 years older than me as well. And one thing I've never understood about this is longevity. A lot of my friends who are older than me, they've worked jobs for a good amount of time. Like, they've been at the same company for like 4 or 5 years. They've like done that. Now, I've had the privilege of meeting people outside of my friendship circle recently, and one of them has worked in Sainsbury's for 23 years. I can't imagine that shit.
Yeah, that's a long time.
And I asked her, I said, like, because again, she's been working there, she's like 18 years old. So it's wild that she's not that old. Like, she's not that old. Like, I think she's approaching 40. And I was like,
that's like 17 to 40 then, right?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Like, it's like, I said, how have you stuck it out for so long? She goes, it's just flown by. That's the same thing, like stocking the shelves. And she goes, no, like, you have to remember, the job's evolved with time and your skills become adaptable. I was like, that sentence there tells me you shouldn't be working at Sainsbury's still. Like, like, what the fuck are you doing there still? And she goes, no, 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 no. And she explained it to me in the process of like, a lot of people look down upon the idea of working in retail and things like that, but things come up. And she was like, I had the issue where I need to earn money. And then as I earn money, I need to keep earning money. And she looked at me and said, you're going to find out as well, because what's going to happen is the minute you start earning money, the things that you normally get, that the prices of those things increase. I was like, what do you mean? Like, if I buy football boots for £40, they'll always be £40. She goes, no, they won't. Because how much were football boots 2 years ago? And I was like, I don't know, £40. Okay. How much were they when you were a child? I was like, oh, £20. Okay. Is the cost of things rising or the cost of things getting lower? And I was like, they're rising. Oh, look at that. So the more money you spend, you're going to want to have things that last longer. So you're going to want to get the £80 football boots. It's like, how do you know this? She goes, I have 2 kids. Everything costs more money. Like everything. Like if you want to buy quality products for your kids, which you're going to want to do, you have to spend more money. And then on top of that, now I'm a manager here. Guess what? I earn more money, but now I need to do things that are smart. I need to budget bills. And guess what? We pay a lot in bills because guess what? I have 2 kids, and every single year their access to technology is developing, which means they use electricity more, and then they now like shower by themselves, which means that they take fucking forever in the shower. So guess what? The water bill goes up, and my husband's an idiot, which means that we just pay for things for no reason anyway. Like we have a Sky subscription, then we have a BT Sports subscription. And the prices sneak up every single year, which means that if I wanted to change jobs, for example, I have to sacrifice probably my pay. And the prices of things don't go down, but my pay will. And after a while, you forget about, everything. You forget everything. You forget about the ambitions you had. You forget about the things you wanted to do, things you wish you could do, because you have to start focusing on the things that are right in front of you. Everything's in the present. Yeah, I wanted to cry after that conversation, but because I realized the same thing. Like we spoke about, we often speak about footballers and how footballers have so much money, and this gets on fucking awful. But one of the things I hate is when people say things like, "Oh, footballers have so much money they don't know what to do with it," and I think sports athletes are probably the worst people to play that game with because of how finite their careers are. Yes, they have they have wealth beyond our imagination. Yes, we have all these things. But with wealth comes things like tax. And when you're an athlete, it's very difficult to avoid paying tax because everything you do is very public. So it's hard to push away the obvious payments that you're getting, especially if you're in a country like, say, the United Kingdom, where you're going to get paid in the United Kingdom, you go be taxed by the United Kingdom. And then your investments is the only way that you can hide like taxable things. And realistically speaking, it's a lot of effort, which means you have to hire somebody, you have to hire an accountant. Oh, look at that. That costs money. Then when you buy like your first house, you're going to need security, especially if you're a really big and famous footballer. Like if you're like, I don't know, a footballer that plays for Arsenal, you're going to have to hire security for your house because football houses being broken into, it's pretty common nowadays. Cool. How much does security cost? Oof. Like, just shy of a couple 100,000 per, like, not even per year, sometimes per month. Because it could be that you have them travel with you everywhere you go. That's a lot of money. Then the house upkeep. You bought this house for your family. Great. But you don't have the time to clean it because, well, you play games twice a week. Great. And when you're not doing that, you're training 3 or 4 times a week. Then when you're not doing that, you have media commitments, which you're contractually obligated to do. Great. And then you have your whole family. Cool. You have to pay someone to look after your house. Fuck. Great. And then you have to play matches. Maybe you have to go away to fucking Karabag. Or you have to play in fucking Kazakhstan. You have to play, a team on the other side of the ocean. Maybe you're doing an international tournament. You have to go to Japan for like 4 weeks. Great. That all costs money. You're not paying for the flights, no, but you're paying for, again, the security. Then you're paying for the maintenance of your house while you're away, then someone to look after your kids, then you're paying for everything that your partner would want to spend money on. Then you have your family. Then you have all these things. And it's a fucking headache.
Mhm.
So when it comes to, you have to be mega rich. I'm talking billionaire rich to be like, hey, none of this affects me. Because those guys, well, look at Amazon. Look at how little they pay. They always dodge it. Look at Tesla recently. They paid close to nothing in various fees that other businesses are paying for. Why? Super rich. And their hands are in all the right pies. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what I'm saying is, to cut this excruciatingly long mini rant of mine on, is yes, you can progress in your life and yes, you can progress in your career. But along with those things seem to always come with more reasons to spend money. I should never work in finance. Anyway.
You're selling it to me. I agree with a lot of that. I don't know if I actually have more to say on that. Can I set up something for? I was thinking about this previously. Obviously, you've seen what I asked you to type in the journal. But I wanted to kind of basically say I think that I'm gonna maybe have as part of the journal. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna have like sort of Joe's spirituality corner, where where during the journal I kind of talk about and discuss with you a little bit of this, because this has been like I said, I think it was last week, right? We're talking about that podcast that will not be named and that guy that will not be named. Because apparently I said it too much. I'm kidding. But sorry, let me bring my head together. There we go. That's it. That this is something that I've been thinking about a lot more lately. So Joe's spirituality corner as subsidized by the journal. So I wanted to start this by asking you a question that I was going to ask you that you know what the question is, but because I prepped you slightly. But I wanted to know about this because I forgot to ask you about it at the time, and then on reflection realized that this is a part of your life that I never, or not even just, I'm not saying like a part of your life, like a big part of your life, but like it's an aspect of your life that I never learnt about even while living near you, because it just didn't have that much kind of impact on me. And I thought it'd be interesting in this scenario because I've had not similar experiences, but experiences that can be described as similar. And this will be the first of a few that I'll do like every week, hopefully, where I'll come back with like a topic around spirituality that I think is interesting. And of course, when I say all this, I should say I'm not going to go too deep into how I feel. I don't want to make this just about me. But a lot of my perceptions of spirituality and so on are coming from an atheist perspective, agnostic perspective as well, or actually an agnostic perspective. Again, I don't want to get too philosophical. Atheist is a more easy one for people to understand. It's not necessarily the one I use all the time, because it depends on the context of what someone's asking me about what I believe. But if we're talking about, but as a result, like when I talk about spirituality, I don't always mean it within the context of a religious one, though I could absolutely talk with someone religious about spirituality, because about this and still have very much the same conversation, because I think it's still a very universal thing. I think that while religion likes to has basically found itself within spirituality being its like a big part of it, I think that the kind of spirituality outside of like very religious context is not always well understood, or has some, or is like too weird. You know, like there's some weird shit that people do that is not religious, but is like weird, like pseudo-scientific.
Yeah.
Is it woo woo, or like I can't remember what the term is, but like, you know, just weird stuff that people do, crystals and all that stuff, where it's like, okay, this is astrology. It's like you know, like where it's like it's not what I think of spirituality as being, because spirituality is not like the very esoteric stuff. It's more like the meditative self, like self understanding, and also understanding of one another and so on. So I'll get more complicated in further weeks, but I just wanted to ask you that you mentioned, I believe last week, that when I mentioned the Baha'i faith in talking about the Within Reason podcast, there again, I mentioned it, that when I asked you, oh, do you know about the Baha'i faith? You said, oh, yes, I do, because I wanted to. I was thinking about becoming a Baha'i at some point. And I, upon reflection, realized that I do remember you telling me that, but it just didn't have the emphasis at the time. So would you mind telling me your experience with that? Because I feel bad that I don't know. And also I think it would be an interesting discussion, given that you, as in my head, have largely been, like me, atheist, agnostic, so on. And what pulled you towards it?
So originally, just to mention briefly, my sister was like Baha'i for a while. And then when she moved out, last I know, she didn't agree with the faith at all anymore. And that's it. I was around 17, 18, I think. That was my first. Sorry, I'm going to restart that bit. So that was when she was part of this whole faith thing. I was in my mid-teens. She then went to like university and all that stuff as well. So then, she then like dropped out of it completely. Now, completely separately, yeah. So like, it was a completely separate thing where I was walking down near Homerton in East London, and like this mid-20s couple were just like, "Hey," and they were like, it felt like how missionaries from the Latter-day Saints talk to you in a way, where they're really optimistic, really happy, and they were like, yeah, like, if you want to meet like young people like yourself, it's like, okay. And they're like, we're literally over here. And they're like sat on like a patch of grass. And I was like, cool. Sat down with them. Can't remember their names. Hung out with them. And they were like, we're going to be up front. We're from the Baha'i faith. I was like, oh yeah, my sister is that. And spoke to them for ages. Got their number. Went to a few of their houses. Like all these guys' houses. Did a fireside, I believe it's called, and like they play music and they just pray that to be happy. And the whole religions aspect is a unity of all religions. So the idea it's a monotheistic religion. So it believes in there being one God. And yeah, it's all peace, love, and hugs for the most part. The issues that will arise with the Baha'i faith is this. The reason why I didn't really follow up with it any further was one, time commitments. I think I was starting my professional wrestling career. And two, I never really felt like I was in a community, and I felt like there was friends to be made there. And I went to people's houses and had fun and all that stuff, but I also felt like it just wasn't the right thing for me to be engaged with. And on reflection, I wish I'd maybe developed a stronger friendship with some of the people, but I would never have stayed in the faith. The faith has, for me, multiple issues, like a lot of religions. So things like sexism, like they have the grand, I can't remember what they actually call it, but their main religious site is women can't be considered leaders of it. And the Universal House of Justice, that's it. The Universal House of Justice, women are not allowed to be considered, well, they can't be elected onto it. It's male only. And the only explanation for it is, well, Abdul Baha said it will become clear, so why are the restrictions in place? So he died in 1920. So, I'm going to guess that it's not really been explained since. And then, just in general, how they view differences, they say, oh, like, spiritually we're the same. But then a few offhand comments about how they feel roles should be expressed in the faith is a bit, for me, restrictive. Their views on sexuality as well also is a bother for me. So same-sex marriage, they like to say, we're a bit progressive. They're not. They, as a faith, they're opposed to same-sex marriage. they have a view very similar to that of, I would say, close to hardcore Christians, in which we're not going to say we're homophobic, but we definitely don't want you to be homosexual. And that's a problem. Their views on LGBTQ plus is really shaky as well, in which like it's, I think, sympathetic. I guess sympathetic. There's a perfect word for it. Really, they're sympathetic to the plight of homosexuality and like gender based differences, which means that they go, "Oh, we're praying for you to be better," you know.
Right. I get you.
Things like that, and a lot of the things that they tend to try and push, that I've seen people try and push, is your family don't understand you. It's one that I got told very early on. So for me, it kind of felt like a bit of a cult style thing, in which if people wanted to, they could probably take it and make it their own thing, because it's a hipster religion.
It started in America, right? No, sorry, it's not
Not
actually.
quite, not quite, not at all.
No.
It's a relatively new religion. It's founded in like the 19th century. It's super fucking like, it's new but old. It's like Iranian, I believe, in like in its origin.
I think it traces back to Sufism as well in Islam. Like it has bits of it in Sufism.
Like yeah, so effectively, it's a Abrahamic Iranian religion, which means that you're gonna have. What I like about it is that it grabs everything from all the religions and brings it all together. What I dislike about it is that it also takes the bad things from those religions and brings it all together. Unlike unlike the Latter-day Saints, in which what I find really funny about it is that the religion of being a Mormon is still being a Christian, but you can be very left-leaning with it still, because randomly their main prophet will go, "I've had a revelation. God has told me that being gay isn't bad. Yay!" I was like, "What? Okay, cool." I like, he'll have another revelation, like, back post-slavery.
To be fair, that's the Catholic Church as well, isn't it?
Yeah. But again, for this guy to stand up and go, "Guess what? Racism is bad." Who told you this? I don't know. But like, and it's like, cool.
I don't know.
and it's like, cool. Like, and though that the followers of the faith might be like, I hate niggas and I hate the gays, the religion has the religion has been like, hey, look, we like everybody now, And yes, there's pratfalls to that as well. Don't come at me in the comments that we barely get. Like, don't be like, oh, well, actually, trust me, I'm not gonna go through a whole History Channel documentary and the whole thing. I'm trying my best to be quite to the point and succinct, just while failing miserably. But like, it's important that I'm not gonna hate someone if they come up to me and say they're Baha'i. I treat it the same way I treat any religion, in which I'd be like, hey, it's cool. I'd love to learn more about it. Educate me, please. Sit me down. We can let's visit like your holy sites. What books can I read? Like, I fucking love learning about religion. It's great. Like, tell me about the Universal House of Justice. Tell me, take me to your mosque. Take me to a synagogue. These are things I've done. Like, learning about religion is such a cool thing. And learning about it while being agnostic is even better, because I don't really come at it from a view of, it's not real. I come at it from a view of, it can all be real. And I think that's so cool to have that mindset, rather than being like, oh, like, religion is all shit. I come at it from a, maybe it isn't, who knows? But yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that is interesting is that, like, your kind of positive, the positive like feel you have of it is very much around what you would, the sort of like spiritual-esque thing of it, if that makes sense. Like the sort of the like the peace, love, the very much very much the idea that, like, yes, this is a we're trying to understand one another in this very like in this way and make community and so on. I think that truly is of what religion has made one of its most powerful attributes, right? And I very much appreciate it. It's the reason why ultimately I don't believe in miracles and so on, but like I have always been interested in Jesus as a character. Like I always find Jesus to be very interesting. And actually, having learned more about the Bible recently, I actually find it way more fascinating than it was before, because I think honestly that religious education is pretty dull in terms of its explanation of actual scripture and things like that. Like you kind of realize when you start looking into these things just how shallow it is, right? Like the teaching. We even went to a Christian school, for God's sakes, and like we barely. I didn't learn that Jesus was much more of a kind of rebel figure amongst the. I mean, I knew about the fact that he was, Pharisee, that the Pharisees didn't like him and so on, like the Jewish sects and the different Jewish sects and so on. But like the idea of him being like a troublemaker and like him talking with John the Baptist and there being this kind of like, and him wanting to be John the Baptist, like to follow John the Baptist, for example, and things like that in a way that is kind of interesting. And there's lots of like little bits in the Bible. Like, again, like listening to that podcast and thinking about it, and the reason why I started thinking about it more, because I could imagine a scenario in which there was that Baha'i group, but they were just slightly less, or they were like a version of the Baha'i that was a bit more like kind of liberally minded and left wing and progressive, I should say, more so than left wing, but progressive. And it would be really easy to kind of feel like it, and you probably been way more swayed by it, right? Like the things that you described that you were like less interested about, to me, those are like doctrine stuff that you were describing. Like, how do we feel about X and Y, rather than the kind of overall message being given, which is obviously in contradiction with what they said anyway, to a certain extent. So it's interesting to me because I think that's really where a lot of the power comes from. But I think it's also why people can be swept up in doctrine. By the way, this is not just a religious thing. This could be tied to anything, ideology, group, political concepts, and so on. Even philosophical concepts, right? Can be brought in by this kind of like feeling that it works for you, but then you have these doctrines that maybe put like positively affirm that because of the environment you've been around and so on, that you have already been taught that's the way it is, and so you feel good by having something affirm it. Or the doctrines that you don't really agree with, you kind of just ignore because it's not, and are more likely, if that's your environment anyway, that they're more likely to be phased out and not talked about, or could even cause like a split, I guess. And so you end up with these, like with Christianity being like split down, like to thousands of different churches and so on. Certainly Protestantism. I find it fascinating personally. Also, actually, this will be the example I'll give, and then this will be the end of Spirituality Corner with Joe. But I had a similar experience. I don't think you had the same experience I did, but you at least did do the thing where Samson took you to one of his like performances or whatever.
Our Christian, I don't know if he still is, but our very Christian friend Samson took me to his church where they're like, I guess I don't know what you actually call the type of church. If you know the name, Joe, tell me. But yeah, like same thing there. Like I was like, cool.
Was it Methodist or no? I forget.
Let's say Methodist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say Methodist sounds correct.
I honestly don't know. I wasn't like super kind of thinking about it at the time, and I also didn't know as many. I didn't understand the distinctions quite as much back then. But it was like a small thing, right, around this pastor who turned out to be a horrible person. But the and actually, interestingly, I think there are many times in his life when I've spoken to him, and I think the most recent time I spoke to him, I think he would be very tempted by the Baha'i faith. I think because he was very much like I believe that there is a God, but I don't believe it's the Christian one kind of thing. You know what I mean? I don't believe it's like exactly that. I don't think that's how it should be defined that way. But I went to one of these performances, and I remember it's so much of it is about the atmosphere. Like I remember feeling before it started and talking with a bunch of people that were of similar age to me and him, and how nice they all were. Like it's all this very similar kind of discussion points, right? Or talking things or notes that you say, like the way you described it, the way I'm describing it, and how I've also heard others describe it, where this really wonderful sense of community for a moment when you're in a time of sadness, right? And or not even just when you're in a time of sadness, but just in general, like it's something that you feel like you're missing. And it was wonderful. And I remember after the performance, I don't really remember anything of the performance, by the way, but I remember the performance, but I remember that a performance happened. I remember the pastor talking, and I remember all of that, and I remember this kind of like feeling that I was going to keep going, or like I had this feeling that like I was saying that I was going to be a part of this or whatever. And I remember like walking home with them, and I remember like part way through walking home what was happening. Like I remember part way through walking home that I had felt like I was going to be a part of this thing, but my brain was like, but you don't believe any of this. Like it was like, I know you feel like this, but you don't believe anything that's happened. And so that was kind of an interesting moment in my life I think that's probably the first time where I experienced that what I imagine lots of people feel when they like, whether it doesn't have to be joining a religion, but have this kind of like spiritual experience of being kind of amongst others in a very kind of vibrant, happy, positive space, and very warming, welcoming and warm and very, wanting to learn about you. And honestly, I think the biggest thing was that there was very little social boundary. I think that's sort of a big one as well. Like I didn't feel at any point like they talked to me the way that I want to talk to people, where I just I don't want to have to think about what I'm going to say. Or I don't want to have to think about how I'm like about like, are people going to feel a certain way? It was that very like they drew me in with that, right? Like I really wanted that kind of experience, and they gave it to me. And of course, these were just people my age. I'm not saying they were doing it on purpose or anything. I think they were just genuinely happy and had learned that this is the way to be part of the way to be happy. And to be honest, I agree. I don't even like necessarily disagree with that at all. That is a wonderful way to be, to have this sense of community and social interaction with others that is very like powerful. And as a result, I remember getting back home, and I remember like maybe half an hour later being like, that feeling is washing away now. And suddenly it felt like my brain was like, yeah, I don't believe any of that. Like it was really like, I don't believe what I said, even in as it like, it was very, very, it was so powerful that it kind of, a bit like when you're in love, right? Enamored me. Like I sort of had a feeling of that, whatever. You get what I'm saying? That like really took over me. And I don't think I ever went into anything else after that. I think if Samson had asked about it, I think I would have been cagey. And maybe he did ask about it again. I don't know. And maybe I said, I just can't come to this one this week or whatever, and just kind of like pushed it off. But to me, that was always interesting because, at least, on reflection, that's interesting because that tells me more about what we can do for one another than any specific like doctrinal idea, or like even the idea of a relationship to God. Although the notion of God and things like that has expanded over time just because of different philosophical concepts and outlooks and so on. So I think we'll probably end up talking about that one week.
We just got to do a present on this, man.
But
like we just got to do something.
We could do.
Something
we could do. I see. It depends. I think the thing is I'm thinking about it right now, kind of more. So that's why I'm putting it here. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it will
like a
become
whole
like
separate
a
episode altogether. Maybe
specific
not even a
episode.
episode, just another episode entirely.
Yeah, true. That could also be the case.
But yeah.
But yeah, I maybe this is interesting to some people. I don't know, but I will say the reason why I find it, I want to kind of talk about it, is because I want people to kind of inspect that part of themselves, which is just the because when we talk about like the loneliness epidemic or the meaning epidemic or the meaning crisis or whatever that exists and things like that, that's maybe the kind of things that we're quote unquote missing in part. But in reality, like, I'm not trying to tell people to go to a religion, because I obviously don't myself. But I want to talk about how about at least ideas I've come up with and ideas of how we as people can unlock spirituality for ourselves without the need for a god, essentially. Or if you do have a conception of a god, that it's one that's sort of atheistic in its presentation, if nothing else. But yeah, no, it's just and that this could be for good for people's mental health, and certainly for me, I think it has helped me to make reckon of certain things. Anyway, continue on before I just keep talking about the subject.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Like, I think
I'm a philosophy boy.
There goes our hope of this episode being under an hour long. But you know,
Don't
who
worry,
knows?
edit it. You'll edit, bring down.
Who knows? Yeah, like there's, I quite enjoy learning about. I view learning about religion the same way I learn about like languages and all that stuff. It's really interesting. I really love learning about origins of it all. So, you know, we have fun. We have fun with it, and it is what it is.
I feel the exact same for that comparison. By the way, I really do.
Like, I just hate the internet's view of religion. Like, the internet is a very atheist-heavy environment where, like, the minute, especially, it's very Islamophobic as well, because there's a lot of racism on the internet. So you just got to deal with that stuff, and it's. I like to think that every religion is somewhat beautiful in its own way. You just figure out how it is and things like that. All that generic nonsense, really. But yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, if you're a religious person listening to this, like, this is a safe space for you. No, I say that meaning that fully. Like,
yeah, totally.
Joe is not one of those atheists who just bash religion for no reason. Heck, you probably wouldn't know he's an atheist until this episode here. So yeah, he's still a cunt though.
Wow.
Yes, yeah, I said it. And it's time for choo choo recommendation station. Joe spoke last for a while, so I'm gonna go first. And my one is real simple. I picked up my Nintendo Switch for the first time in about 8 months, and
Forgot you
I
had
was
that.
I was at work, and I said I need something to play, and I had 15 minutes. So I played Moonlighter, and I've been playing it for the last 2-3 days now, and it's been really fun. Moonlight is a rogue light game. You kill stuff in dungeons, then you loot the dungeons, then you take it and you put it in your shop, and you sell stuff. You make money, and everyone's happy. There's a lot more to the game, but that is the main premise of the game. It doesn't have like the greatest story in the world because it doesn't really need one, but there's a lot of lore about. There's things that you could sink your teeth into. You can min-max the game if you really want to, or you can just do what I do and just dick about and try and make loads of money and kill things and get cool weapons and all that stuff. It released a DLC as well, and Moonlighter 2, or the sequel to the game anyway, is coming out some point. I think it could be next month. I'm not too sure. But yeah, it's a cool little game. It should be cheap because it came out 6-7 years ago. So yeah, Moonlighter. That's me.
Is this the one that's also multiplayer?
I don't know.
Okay. No worries then. My one is a pretty well, I thought it was a really popular thing, but you apparently didn't know about it, which is why I'm going to mention on here in case
thing
other
ever.
people don't know.
I don't know. I don't know anything about anything that's been released.
Kessers also didn't know about it, to be fair. So that's partly why I'm bringing it up as well. I'm recommending Severance. It had season 1 came out 3 years ago, and season 2 is coming out as we're going along. You can, I believe, actually watch on Amazon Prime Video, both seasons. So, it is actually a little bit more available than I first thought. Because initially I was just watching it through more clippy style things to a certain extent, and it's really good. It's a thriller. I really enjoy it. It's got a really cool concept. I told you what the concept was, but I'm going to not say what the concept was entirely. But I'll say that the concept is based a lot around the idea of work and the work-life balance. And the show on first watch, I think, is really good as a thriller, and I think it does a really good job of I've seen people's reactions to it as well, and the emotion that people feel during certain episodes is really, really high, and I love it because it's the same way I felt with that, and it's like much higher than I'm used to seeing when other people like sort of react to stuff. So it's a genuinely like good example of what to do, and it's actually I personally really like how it's shot, and I think the dialogue is incredibly good. I think the actors are probably some of my favorite parts of it. Adam Scott, I think Adam Scott is his name. The main guy is incredibly good. Like it's not always obvious. Like at the beginning, his name is Adam Scott. Yeah, he was in Parks and Rec. You'd recognize his face. But like there are very specific moments in the show where you watch it and you see him face act in a way that I've never seen before. Like it's so good. It almost looks like they've like turned like a robot is doing it. It's like insane, like how well he's able to manipulate his expression. So yeah, I can't explain it too well beyond that. It's really, really good. And if you're kind of like Black Mirror liker, it's like that, but not quite as horrific, sort of. And it's depends on how. If you don't like that, if you think it's a bit too far, then it's not quite that far because it's not designed, it's not written that way. And yeah, it's really good. On second watch, I realized that there's a lot more stuff in relation to psychology and mental health than I originally realized, which is partly why I'm recommending it as well. Because there's lots of stuff about I realized there's certain things related to psychology ideas that have existed, like for example, emotions being categorized a particular way and so on, that it actually touches upon more so in its lore and things like that. So again, really fast, really good to watch. And the second season's coming out now, and you don't have to wait 3 years for the second season to come out. So I would highly recommend it.
Yep. That is Severance, which is on Apple TV. You can watch the first episode free on Amazon Prime, but then you have to subscribe to Apple TV anyway.
Oh, okay,
so it's
gotcha.
pretty much only on Apple TV. And Moonlighter is available on Nintendo Switch, Xbox, PlayStation 4, I think it is, and Steam and shit like that as well. But yeah, that's that. We're going to take 2 steps to the rear and get out of here. We're in the wind. See ya.